want to talk a little bit about the one word that maybe brings most of you here, and it's called suffering. And most of us are programmed to believe that our suffering is personal, that it belongs to us. We sort of know we're not unique in it, but we also can't quite see beyond it. We all suffer in varying degrees. Some of us pretty much continually, some of us go in and out of it, but we're all aware of its sort of base level nature. It's a kind of existential reality. The journey, on some levels spiritually, is from the personal to the impersonal. And the recognition, not that it's satisfying or comforting, that your suffering is not yours alone, that it is shared by every other person in the human race. There is no one who escapes it. There is no one who can buy their way out of it. There's no one who can meditate their way out of it. It is a ground level part of the experience of being. Some suffering responds well to Tylenol, some to Motrin, Aleve. Some suffering is handled well by sex. Some people go to alcohol and drugs of all kinds. But it never gets rid of the problem. Otherwise, the pharmaceutical industry would be out of business. If you took one Tylenol and that was it for the rest of your life, well, that would be wonderful, but it doesn't work that way. Nor does a meditation class. One meditation class does not cure you of the human condition. And, you may not want to hear this, but awakening and enlightenment may, in a sense, remove you from your own personal suffering, but then it will be welcome to the suffering of humanity. You will feel everything. Everything. Nothing escapes you. When Nisargadatta says, I am that, it means you are all there is. And that includes the universal reality that being embodied, being in the world, being someone who walks on the earth, is going to deal with the problem of suffering. Now it's interesting, something happens along the journey of suffering that is kind of surprising. It's called happiness. It goes boop. Oh. Things cause happiness. Hershey bar, maybe not for you guys, maybe Belgian chocolate. Somebody saying they like you. A really good TV show. A walk in the woods. Suddenly happiness happens. And you go, oh, well, I want that. Not only do I want it all the time. How may I get constant, permanent happiness? And then you can't, and that causes suffering. You try, you do all your things, but 12 Hershey bars, you do not get happiness that is extended beyond the first Hershey bar. If anything, you put on weight, you're unhappy, all of these awful things happen, you have a stomach ache. So measuring happiness, it kind of comes in small doses, but it's really important. Beyond happiness, there's something that comes sometimes starting very early in the game, like the minute you're born, called love. both experiencing love for that person who picks you up out of the cradle and holds you near and gives you milk to drink and swaddles you and rocks you and makes you feel comforted and loved. And that love that comes at you goes back to that person. And there's this incredible thing of shared love. And it's so beautiful. And then it gets tested. You decide to stick a fork in the plug on the wall and get a shock, and your loved one, mother, whoever, screams at you and yells at you and says, "Don't you ever do that, and you're a bad boy or a bad girl," or whatever, and you're already in pain from the shock, and you realize love is not constant. It's conditional. You can have it if you behave a certain way, and you can't have it if you behave a different way. And so you begin to modify your life in order to get this thing called love. And this authentic person who really wants to stick knives or forks into plugs is told there are things you can do and there are things you can't do. And so you begin to create a life in other people's image, according to their demands and their requirements. If you go to church every Sunday with me, I will love you. If you miss a Sunday, you're not going to get love from me or Jesus or God or whatever you want to think of it. And you start to modify your life in order to stay in that environment. And then you start to feel, I don't want to go to church. I don't want to go to synagogue. I don't want to be this religious person. I'm just picking this out of the air. And you start to feel guilty, and you start to feel bad, and you start to feel like I'm not a good person. And you know that's going to come at you from outside, and it's going to come at you from inside, and you're starting to be tormented by your own judgment of self. You don't want to behave in other person's terms. You don't want to follow other people's guidelines and restrictions because they're not yours. You go to school and you sit in a room and they tell you you have to sit here until 3 o'clock and imbibe information, whereas you know running around outside playing is so much more fun, so much easier, and yet they force you into these restrictions, and you start to define yourself based on how well you perform in those situations. They tell you A effort failed. You begin to be judged by all of these outside things, and your happiness and unhappiness becomes defined by these things, and you lose sight of who you are. The person who wants to run around free cannot run around free. The person who wants to be loved isn't being loved because they don't conform. And you start to feel all of this dissatisfaction, and this suffering comes up, and you don't know where you stand. Who am I in all this? Why is this happening to me? It could be so much fun. It could be such a beautiful life. Why are all these restrictions coming up and forcing me to be somebody I'm not, or I don't want to be, and why don't I measure up? And all of these noises go on in your head, and they create suffering. More and more and more suffering. I'm only at the tip of the iceberg here because it goes deep. There's so many levels of this stuff that goes on, but the problem is when you get to be in your 20s, you are layered with dissatisfactions, with hungers that have not been met, with desires that are not possible to satisfy. You find yourself in all of these places of enormous discomfort. So no wonder you have headaches. No wonder you start to want Tylenol, and you want to start to drink, or you want to start to do whatever you want to do, because anything that will ameliorate the problem is seen as a gift. Those of you who stumble upon meditation mostly stumble upon it because you think, finally, the pill that will really work forever. I can meditate my way out of all of this stuff. And I'm here to tell you, it doesn't really work like that. You don't get out of it. What you get is a new perception of what all this is. And it's not even a perception that can be articulated or enumerated or in any way understood in any conceptual way. What you get is a blast into awakening, awareness, that somehow all this stuff exists within the framework of something greater, and that greater is in some way connected to you. in fact, may actually be you. And all the suffering that's going on is in the confines of you. Often it's described in some spiritual places as a huge cloudless sky filling with clouds. The clouds are not the sky. The clouds appear in the sky. They appear as beautiful, fluffy, willowy little movements of white energy moving through the sky. And sometimes they are dark and foreboding and full of electricity and explosive. And they move through the sky. And if you are aware that you are the sky, you look at these clouds and you look at them and you appreciate the beautiful ones. You really love the sunsets, the sunrises, and the stormy clouds. You go, okay. You know that all these things arise because they must arise in part of the nature of what you are. But the journey in spiritual terms is from being these uprising cloud forms that you become totally caught in, loving and wanting to hold on to the ones that are fading away, and terrified by the ones that are forming and thinking they'll be there forever when they never are. Learning to become the sky is not actually a becoming of anything. You don't become the sky, you simply realize you have always been the sky. That's who and what you are. But I can tell you that over and over and over again, and yet every time those dark clouds arise, you're going to go, what's he talking about? This dark cloud has filled the sky, it's filled everything in front of me, it's everywhere. This electricity is shooting through the air. I am suffering, this is horrible, this is the worst imaginable thing, it will never be over, I will live like this forever, I might as well try to get out of here. When the next thing you know, the clouds go away, sunrise comes, it's beautiful again. The truth of spiritual awakening is that you are everything. You are the totality. You are the absolute. You are the clouds in the sky and the sky. You are what is beyond the sky. You are the infinite universe with all of its planets and all of its forms and all of its sunrises and sunsets, billions upon billions and trillions upon trillions. And all of that is going on, and there is you here in this manifested state complaining or suffering because you are experiencing a particular tiny little corner of the vastness of being. What's really wanted is a way of unraveling all of that programming that went into making you this unhappy, sad, discomforted person. Now, if I'm not talking to you, I mean, if you're one of these people who's here and saying, I'm not unhappy, I'm fine, I'm great, then fine. then I'm not addressing you. But those of you who are sitting here feeling burdened by the bad programming of your life, who have been led into thinking that you are somehow imperfect, separate, maybe even a bad person, let me tell you, all you need to do is reset. You need to reset the program. How do you reset this years and years of bad programming? Well, any of you who have a computer, it's always the last thing we think of. There's all these things going wrong with the computer. It's not doing it, these numbers won't type, this thing keeps repeating itself over and over. It's what's going on, I don't understand, go to the manual, call the people. Almost always you'll be told, turn it off, put it back in again, and it will be fine. And I would say 90% of the time, that's exactly what works. I don't understand it, but you turn off the computer, plug it in, and it's like, for a while, it's working. We need to do that to ourselves. We need to turn ourselves off. On occasion, if we're not functioning well, keep it off, what do they say, for a minute, and then plug it back in. So how do you turn yourself off? Well, partly Sleep is a way of letting it reestablish itself. You wake up in the morning and it kind of is working. But another thing that we can do is this meditative process. Meditation is essentially turning off the program for a short period of time, sitting in stillness where you don't give life to all of the noise that's moving through the system, where you simply are in sleep mode, but you're awake. Not only are you awake, you are truly conscious to all of the stuff that tries to rise up from the old programs into the system. And you watch these programs arise, and from sleep mode or meditative mode, you can go, nope, 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 not going to engage, not going to engage. All the old patterns start to come up, and if you can get deep enough in yourself in the place of enough stillness, when this program comes up, you are able really to look at it rising, because before it has taken full form, it really is incipient. It's this tiny little thing coming up, and you can see it and go, nope. And when it's a little seed form, it's not hard to do that. Once it's full blown, once you're into what's wrong with me, I've been terrible my whole life, and why am I so whatever that, once it's like that, you're in it. You're caught. Program is taken over. So what you have to do when that happens is, in Rudy's practice, take another breath, hold your breath, ask inside as deeply as you can for help to surrender, which means to let go of the programming, to let go of the noise, to let go of your identification with all the stuff that's filling your mindset, filling your computer, and just be quiet. And what you discover in sitting still is this incredible kind of invitation into a quiet space that can look at and observe the insanity of your own mind. And by observing the insanity of your mind, you can, if nothing else, know from past experience that this storm cloud that's moving through the system will move through the system. You may not be able to break it apart. You may not be able to send fireworks into it and blow it into oblivion. But what you can do is go, okay, storm cloud, I can do this. And you sit still, and the storm cloud passes through. Now, on occasion, there are storms that last for days, or weeks, months, or longer. I was watching a news report last night about people in Paris where the Seine is overflowing its banks into all these amazingly beautiful places. And they say it hasn't stopped raining since I guess early December or January, somewhere, but it has been raining and raining and raining. There are storms like that, and they do cause havoc. The rain can come and cause rivers to swell and overflow their banks and really do damage in the world. And if that is starting to happen to you, you have things you need to do. Get to higher ground. Find a place you can go that will be dry until the rain is over. You don't want to stand outside in the midst of a storm. You don't want to be in a bad environment when the storm is coming. You want some protection. Where can you go for protection? Well, there's a warm fireplace waiting for you in your heart. It's just waiting. Just go and ride it out. If you have to ride it out for 4 days or 5 days or 6 days, make sure you have something nice, a good book to read or a good TV series to watch or whatever you're gonna do inside your heart. Sit there, relax, enjoy yourself, and the storm will be over. If you are one of those people for whom the storms rage for a very long time, you need to find help. One of the great elements of the practice that we do is asking for help. I cannot tell you how crucial that is to the human journey. Where do we go for help? Well, we often go to people we know. Sometimes they will be helpful, sometimes they will not be helpful. My experience with most people I know is that they're prescriptive. Why don't you do this and do that and do this and do that? And that's not what I want, really. Usually I just want a hug, or someone to say I get it, or I understand, or a compassionate response. But anyway, you'll get what you get. If that doesn't work, there are people paid to help you. There are psychiatrists, there are therapists, there are all sorts of practices that you can go to try to get help. There even are medications, and I don't know that I'm going to tell you to go get medicated, but if you're really, really in trouble and suffering, and some of us have chemistry problems, chemicals within us that are very toxic to us, and we cannot get rid of by ourselves, go get help. But in most cases, help comes from the deepest of all possible sources, from the deepest well of being. Help comes from the reality of who you are and what you are connected to. And when you go deep inside your heart chakra and you enter in that portal of opening that opens you to the infinite, you will discover there is a help that transcends understanding. There is something that comes through and takes you on. It comes through and lifts you up. It comes through and speaks to you. It guides you. It provides you with the navigation you need to get through the day, the week, the month, the year of your suffering. In fact, real suffering forces you to go there. People I know in grief are the most compelled to find help internally. It will come. True human suffering leads you inward because there's nowhere outwardly that you can get that help, really. This inward journey will bring you to a place that will go, it's okay. Come sit down for a bit, I'll take care of you. Trust me, there is something that takes care of you. There is something that loves you. I don't know if you believe me or if you trust me or if you want to take it as an act of faith, but there is something within that envelops and uplifts and removes not the suffering, but the perspective that thinks that suffering is all there is. In fact, the suffering becomes the doorway to yourself. It's one of the ways the universe forces you to find who you are. There's one other very important element in this, and that is the Navel Chakra. The Navel Chakra is a place of power. But the most positive spin on that word is empowerment. It empowers you to change, to make changes. It takes you from the wanting intellectually and the wishing emotionally into a place of actual action. If you are suffering, it will give you something to do, if you will, that you can take into your own hands that will allow you to move toward a release from suffering. It may, for example, encourage you to go for a walk. Go out for a walk. This has proven to be one of my great salvations. When I am suffering, and trust me, all these years of meditation, and now my suffering is no longer personal, this impersonal suffering is vast. And it is real. And all I do is I go outside and I walk. I walk it off, if you will, or I walk through it, or I walk into it, and it allows me to appreciate the dynamic of suffering in the human condition. It's not a negative, it's not a bad thing, it's not terrible. It's a kind of strange, bizarre gift that we have that brings us into ourself. And so if you can get to the place of empowerment, it will allow you to do something, meaning go to the meditation class, sit and meditate, go for a walk, call your friend you haven't spoken to in 2 months. Do the thing that will start to change the equation. This action that we have that comes out of the navel is what begins to lift you up, that begins to change the course of events. You have the power to change yourself. You are empowered by you if you will attack this thing, that's a wrong word, if you can dig into this thing and make it work. If you don't use it, then you sit around wishing and wanting and nothing happens. And so many people I know are failed yogis because they don't get to the navel chakra, because they don't transform themselves, they just wish they could. Or they wish the teacher will do it for them. Oh, if I only go to sit with this teacher will lift me up. And they will for an hour, maybe. They'll make you feel good. They'll promise you, heaven on earth and bliss eternal. And that feels wonderful. But the reality is you have to build that structure that can house that bliss. And if it is eternal, it doesn't mean it's just in this lifetime. It's way beyond this lifetime. And you may not have it every day. You may not have it every minute, just like you couldn't have happiness every minute. You also won't have grief every minute. You also won't have suffering every minute. What you will have is totality. Totality is everything. You will have everything. In the world, it will be time-based, meaning it will come and go, it will be here and there, it will be past and future. In reality, it's all present tense. It is a constant truth. You will always have grief and joy, upliftment and depression. You will always have all there is now in this present tense. And when you say yes to that present tense, and there's no you interacting with it, it's just what it is, that's when you are liberated into truth. You are liberated into aha. You will not understand it, you will not grasp it, you will not in any way be able to articulate it, but you will know it. And you will be free to be this vastness of being that you truly are now. That's the journey that we're on. You are either tapping into it or you're coming here for release from suffering and hoping I'll give it to you or somebody will. You are not going to be given it, you're going to take it. You have to go for it. This is not somebody else's ride. It's not a ride that somebody else can take care of. You are on it. Yes, people can help along the way. Yes, the pharmacist can give you a pill, and vodka. I don't drink, but those things can temporarily help you. But the existential truth can only be taken care of by realizing that you are the vastness of being in which these things come and go. And they will continue to come and go, and there will be nobody reacting to it, which is where the suffering comes. There will just be the thing itself, and you will see it happening. And the one response that your being will have to this suffering is called compassion, because you'll know everyone else is going through it. Everyone else is experiencing it, whether they show it or don't, whether they act out that they're having it or they act out that they're the happiest person around, they've got it. And if they don't have it now, they will, because this journey does not end well. This journey ends in the loss of everything that's familiar, everything that's comfortable, everything that assures you that you're okay. All of that is taken away. And when you get to be my age and you watch it being taken away, you go, well, what do I have to rest upon? Who am I if I don't have the familiar, if I don't have the old patterns, if I don't have the things that always reinforced my being? Who am I? What am I? That's the question. And that's what you'll find out as the universe removes comfort and familiarity and ease and replaces it with, in the end, what becomes a lot of suffering. And if you use it well, the doorway to infinite awakening. So, this is an amazing ride that we are all on. And in a collective sense, when we sit like this in a room together, we get an hour or more of quietude, upliftment, some breaking down of the tension, some breaking down of the configuration that keeps bringing us into the same old pattern. We actually get a chance to turn it around. We get this navel level capacity to say, I can do this, and the empowerment to actually change yourself. Rudy gives us this practice, which is really dynamic, that makes it possible to ask for help over and over and again, to break down your configurations, to break down your stupid patterns and tensions. You'll start to breathe, you'll start to live, you'll start to be grateful to have a life, you'll start to be a happy human being at moments that more than ever before, and you'll be able to look at the unhappy moments and go, yep, that too, even that. This past week was Rudy's 90th birthday, and we bought a little cake downstairs, because I know most of you don't eat cake. But when we're done with class, we're going to go downstairs and light a candle and sing happy birthday. I am really grateful that I found a teacher in my lifetime who gave me the core elements that I share with you to this day. And, you know, we're lucky if we find something that speaks to us. I don't know if it speaks to you, but it speaks to me. It speaks through me, and I am grateful that this navigational tool has made it possible to have a really satisfying and fulfilling life. I really wish that upon all of you, and I really believe if you take charge, you'll get it. It means, you know, whatever it means. For me, it meant sitting every day and meditating for years and years and years and years and decades and decades and decades, and that was the payoff of all of that was, this is what it is. Rudy used to say the reward of work is more work. That's really kind of how it goes. But you do get to a place where you're not working for you anymore, you're really working for what is. It's not personal, it's impersonal. That's the journey, to go from the me to the us, the I to the we. That's the journey. And I wish you well on that journey. And to the degree that this is of any help, come visit. If it's not, find the place that helps. I'm sure it's out there. Thank you guys for coming. Any questions? Any questions today? I know we've been sitting a long time, but.
So building off what you were saying about there's the thing that wants authenticity, the drive towards authenticity, and the drive towards being loved that sometimes can be at odds. What's interesting to me is that there's ways that part of the programming, there's these unconscious things that show up to actually push against authenticity. They are at odds with authenticity because they're afraid of losing the love out there. And so this sort of almost internal conflict can show up.
Yes, I mean, that's absolutely right. I mean, most of us will do the dance of inauthentic being in order to be loved. But then we're being loved for something that's not real. That's a false presentation. It's a dance that is trying to get other people's love, and if you do the dance wrong or don't do the dance regularly or whatever, you won't get their love and you'll dance harder and you'll give up the authentic search, or the search for authenticity. My encouragement would be move toward the authentic and then take whatever love comes for that. Because if it doesn't find love, at least you'll be authentic. And if it does find love, it'll be for who you are and not for who you're pretending to be to make that other person love you. It's a hard shift to make. We all are driven toward that, but very few people actually make the synaptic move toward authenticity because of the terror that you will lose those who loved you for your inauthentic being, for the presentation rather than the reality. So gently move toward who you are, stand up for who you are, what you are, whatever that may be. I mean, the real problem, unfortunately, is most of us don't understand what's authentic in us. We very much misrepresent that. You know, we have another version of ourselves which is going to trap us just as much as the one that trapped us in the inauthentic. It's just another version of inauthentic. But to get truly too authentic is to go deep inside and you start to really see who and what you are. And more importantly, you begin to accept who and what you are. And that acceptance and that love is greater than any love that will come to you from the outside. You will love the being you are, screw everybody else. Really, it's the better place to be. Because if you're relying on an action to get love from people, then you're going to be doing their dance and not yours. If you're creating a new authenticity that you think is going to get more love, you're still reaching for outside. And outside love is temporal, meaning it's at some point going to go away along with everything else. The true authentic being inside never loses the love, because the love that comes from within, I'm going to postulate this and I could be wrong, but it is forever. And if I'm wrong, at least you'll have it while you're alive. You'll be walking around going, okay, this is who I am. It's what I am. This is it. Love me, don't love me, this is all you're getting. And when you finally get to that place and you feel good about yourself, the internal ride in this lifetime is so much sweeter than the one where you're pretending to be another person. Okay. Thank you guys for coming. Be back in February. I'll give you all quick hugs downstairs, but let's go in the kitchen. Before we start eating, we'll sing happy birthday to Rudy. Thank you.